Today we talk about Taiwan's meaningful participation in the WHA. Actually, health issue is a fundamental right for human being according to WHO Constitution. And indeed, Taiwan is still a piece of missing puzzle for the global health. So in this regard, actually, we got many different kinds of support in international forum. For example, this year, G7 Foreign Minister statement. For example, Swedish Minister of Foreign Affairs. They in this situation, both of them, they support Taiwan's meaningful participation very, very strong. Especially Swedish Minister of Foreign Affairs. He mentioned many times support Taiwan as an observer in the WHA, and of course promote Taiwan participation in the WHO main technical meeting and so on, or all we call cooperation with global health issues. Actually, in terms of international law, a member of WHO or a member of UN, nothing related to each other. For example, two countries, Niue, Cook Island, both of these two countries, they are not member of UN. However, they are member of WHO. And the other country, Liechtenstein, is a member of WHO. However, Liechtenstein is, Liechtenstein is a member of the UN. However, Liechtenstein is not member of WHO. So therefore, if you are a member of WHO or not, it's nothing to do with your member of WHO. And number two is practice. In terms of practice, so under WHO, there are some mechanisms. For example, GISRS, for example, GDHCN. And let me give you just a very simple mechanism, GISRS. That means if one day WHO finds some new type of virus, and they can through GISRS system send to every member state and observer. However, nowadays Taiwan has disconnected with such network. So therefore, if WHO finds some new virus, cannot send to Taiwan. And ridiculous is that even Taiwan finds some new virus, Taiwan cannot through GISRS send back to WHO such system. So therefore, a meaningful participation for Taiwan is very crucial, not just only for the region, but also not for Taiwan, but also for the region and for the global. Last year, EU representative actually was at that time was from Swedish side, Swedish Minister for Healthcare. She was in WHA, said very clear, please leave no region behind. And this year we do hope Swedish Minister for Healthcare could speak out in the general discussion session in the WHA for support Taiwan's meaningful participation in the WHA and as an observer. I would like to stop here. I do believe today you will have very, very successful discussion and very, very rich information exchange to each other. Thank you, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So what we're going to do now is to start with Professor Yu-Chun Chen, and then we will start Reinhard Butekoffer, and hopefully then we will have Kerstin Lundgren, if you can resolve her technical difficulties. To the audience, I would ask you to put your questions in the Q&A, and we will take them because we will have ample of time for question and answers. So, Professor Chen, the floor is yours.
Okay. So, hello everyone. I'm Yu Zhong from Donghai University in the middle of Taiwan. You are always and anytime welcome to visit this beautiful university if you will and if you have time. I would like to express my gratitude to our Ambassador, Dr. Gu, and organizers for the invitation. I'm also very pleased to see the establishment of the Taiwan Studies Center by the Institute for Security and Development Policy in Sweden. The topic I want to discuss now is Taiwan's international participation and its involvement in the WHA. I will first briefly address Taiwan's diplomatic situation. Then I will explain why supporting Taiwan's participation in the WHA is important. Next, I will share some suggestions to strengthen international cooperation with Taiwan. Firstly, I have to say that Taiwan's international situation is highly abnormal. We all know that Taiwan is a sovereign state, but we lack normal international recognition. We have our own independent constitution, an elected government, and a well-established democratic system in the world. As you know, we recently elected our new president in January. The population of Taiwan is nearly 24 million, and we possess an independent military, police force, and independent foreign policy. I think our Ambassador, Dr. Gu, would also strongly agree with this. However, Taiwan's international participation is even inferior to some authoritarian or dictatorship regions, such as Russia or North Korea. And we all know that the primary factor causing diplomatic challenges for Taiwan, yes, is China, which insists on the One China principle, asserting that Taiwan is part of China's territory and has no right to separate representation in international organizations. But I have to stress that China's claim of sovereignty over Taiwan are both legally and factually incorrect, and it is also not in line with reality. Why is it important to support Taiwan's participation in WHA? I think there are at least several important reasons as follows. First, Taiwan is a vibrant democracy with a lively and active civil society and respect for human rights. Supporting Taiwan's participation in international organizations strengthens global democracy by ensuring that diverse voices are represented and heard on the international stage. And we also have demonstrated our capability to contribute meaningfully to global health issues. Supporting Taiwan's involvement in the WHA sent a clear message that democratic nations stand for fairness, inclusivity, and the right of all nations to participate in global decision-making process. Second, Taiwan's exclusion from the World Health Organization and the WHA hinders global efforts to address public health challenges. Taiwan's expertise and contributions in areas such as pandemic prevention, healthcare, and medical research can greatly benefit the international community. By including Taiwan, we can enhance global health cooperation and better response to global health crises. Additionally, Taiwan's exclusion from the WHA creates gap in global health governance and response mechanisms, and it is a violation of Taiwan's more than 23 million citizens' right to health. And it is also as a hurt to global health efforts. Taiwan's exclusion weakens global efforts to prevent and control pandemics and other health crises. Furthermore, supporting Taiwan's participation in the WHA serves the interests of regional and global stability. Taiwan is a key player in the Asia-Pacific region, and its inclusion in international organizations forces dialogue, cooperation, and mutual understanding among nations. By engaging with Taiwan on health issues, democratic nations can contribute to building trust and confidence across the Taiwan Strait and promote peace and stability in the region. If we all agree it is important to help Taiwan join international organizations or forums such as the WHA, here are some steps that can be taken. First, we can establish an informal yet meaningful diplomatic platform for cooperation with Taiwan. In Asia Pacific, we have the GCTF, that is Global Cooperation and Training Framework, with the US, Japan, and Australia. The GCTF is a platform to utilize Taiwan's strengths and expertise to address global issues of mutual concern. Over the past nearly 10 years, the GCTF has held more than 70 international workshops on such topics as public health, law enforcement, cooperation, women's empowerment, energy issue, cybersecurity, human rights assistance, and so on. We welcome more like-minded countries to participate in the GCTF and further expand cooperation under it. We welcome countries from various geopolitical backgrounds to engage in substantive cooperation with Taiwan through the N+1 model, maybe Nordic countries and Taiwan, so-called Nordic 5+1, for example. Secondly, we can strengthen the diplomatic engagement and the public diplomacy, engage in bilateral and multilateral diplomacy to promote Taiwan's participation in international organizations. This involves lobbying other countries to support Taiwan's inclusion and working within diplomatic frameworks to advocate for Taiwan interests. We can also use public diplomatic channels to raise awareness about Taiwan's exclusion from international organizations and garner support from the global community. Third, multilateral support and bilateral agreements. We can work together. We can work through multilateral forums to highlight the importance of Taiwan's participation in global health governance. This includes raising the issue at international conference, forums, and meetings where health-related topics are discussed. Moreover, we can carry out bilateral agreements to support Taiwan's participation in international health activities, including the WHA. Finally, we can attempt to pursue strategies through international law or reform within the World Health Assembly. This may involve inquire international law, treaties, and agreements to determine whether there are legal grounds to support Taiwan's participation. We can also advocate for reform within the World Health Organization to make the organization more inclusive and responsive to needs of all member states, including Taiwan. At the end of my report, I would like to make some conclusions. First, allowing China to bully Taiwan is equivalent to condoning and accepting authoritarian bullying against democracy. Second, supporting Taiwan's association to the WHA not only aligns with human rights and democratic values, but also sends a message to China that it cannot act with impunity. It is also a call for stability and peace in Taiwan Strait. Third and finally, Taiwan seeks international support on the one hand, while on the other hand, Taiwan can also make contribution to global health. Thank you for your listening, and please don't forget that supporting Taiwan is also supporting democracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Chen. Reinhard Butekoffer, you're up. I will leave the floor to you, and I'm looking forward to, as always, in a very interesting presentation.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Good morning to everybody from Berlin. Special greetings go to the ambassador and to Professor Chen, who we just listened to. You made a very nice joke, Ambassador, about some German names, and then said in Taiwan you use very often the term work hard. I would like to inform you that my name, Reinhard, basically means think hard. So I think that matches just fine. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to join this conversation. As we look forward to the 77th World Health Assembly, we are again active to try push the efforts that have been repeatedly made over the years to get back to a meaningful participation of Taiwan in the WHA. And I say explicitly get back to, because there have been years when this meaningful participation was allowed and not excluded. I think of the years 2008 to 2016, when under the presidency of Ma Ying-jeou in Taiwan, the PRC did not prevent that participation. I think that simple fact that it has happened in the past proves sufficiently that it could also happen in the future. There are no legal impediments against Taiwan's meaningful participation. And I don't think we have to spend too much time on arguing Taiwan's international stature according to international law. You know well that the European Parliament does not accept China's One China principle. We follow our own policy, which we call One China policy, but that does not recognize China's claim that they have a right to control Taiwan. But we can leave that aside because it's not a legal, it's a political issue. And I feel that we have an obligation to clearly address the character of that political issue. I see the efforts made by the PRC to prevent Taiwan from partaking in the important work of the WHA as part of a strategy that tries to deny Taiwan its own democratic right to a self-determination, and it is part of an aggressive scheme that the PRC is pursuing more energetically at the moment than ever before. I believe that the discussions should not be based on the silent or explicit acknowledgement of China's ambitions, but it should be based on practical reason. And when we look at that dimension, and Professor Shen has already mentioned that, then we can see that there are two very fundamental arguments in favor of Taiwan's participation. Number one, during the pandemic, Taiwan did an excellent job in managing the challenges that arose with that pandemic that originated in the PRC. Taiwan did a much better job than many other countries. And to ignore the positive experience that Taiwan can offer is just ignorant, and it is not in the interest of citizens worldwide who could benefit from including that experience. And the second argument is that Taiwan has also shown its willingness and its ability to practice solidarity with other countries. During the pandemic, Taiwan donated health materials to so many different countries, including in Europe. And more recently, since the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine has started, Taiwan has also donated materials to Ukraine to show the solidarity of one democracy with another. On that basis, I think Taiwan is effectively playing a very positive role, and that should be acknowledged. The European Parliament has done so over many years. You are certainly aware of that. Again, we are writing letters to the section of WHO, Tedros Ghebreyesus, to ask him for changing the stance of the organization. But we have also several official resolutions of the European Parliament where a vast majority of the members of this democratic body came forward in support of Taiwan's claim for meaningful participation in the WHA work, but also the work of other international organizations like ICAO or Interpol or UNFCCC. This is also a stance of which we have asked our HRVP, you could call him the European Foreign Minister, Josep Borrell, and our member states to support that vis-a-vis the WHO and the WHA and vis-a-vis the PRC. Now, obviously, the resistance from Beijing is stubborn. And I therefore think we should also have a conversation about how we could succeed better in the future in mobilizing more support. And I believe that one of the strategies that could play a role would be that we mobilize more effectively and more consistently civil society. I think it makes a difference whether it's just some politicians explaining why they support Taiwan, or whether it is also professional associations. We have so many doctors' associations, nurses' associations in all countries. If they would come forward in supporting Taiwan more vocally, I think that could have an impact. And we could also use the relationships that these associations in our own countries have with similar associations in third countries to try convincing those countries to move on. I believe that China is not a rock that cannot be moved, but I think it needs a lot of international solidarity, including from countries from the global south. And I believe that what we should do in the future is make better efforts to mobilize civil society support in order to move that rock. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Very interesting, and actually very much in line with your final commentary. We had a question from the audience, from Brian Iceland, who has that, you know, how can civil society be mobilized towards accession? I mean, what should be the first step starting tomorrow to mobilize the civil society approach? And in light of that, I mean, what can we do for academic and research institutions like the ISDP or others to support Taiwan's bid for inclusion in the World Health Assembly? What are the practical steps? And I leave that question to both authors, both speakers, but maybe
let Professor Shen go first.
Professor Shen, yeah, Bob.
Yes, I think everything what we can do is like to promote no political cooperation, especially just like academia research and healthcare research and so on. What we can do is that to make a strong civil society and cooperation together, For example, we can visit other country to do the research, promote the medical research and the health issue. And we also welcome other countries' researchers to Taiwan and make a cooperation to do the same thing. I think from the bottom to up, it will make a beautiful and a stronger model for cooperation with Taiwan and the other like-minded countries.
My first reaction, of course, is civil society in China is not very strong, and the Chinese government don't really listen to civil society in general. So how can we, how can we ensure that we have an impact on even on the government in Beijing?
So you mean to affect Beijing? I think it's very hard.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very hard to affect and to change Beijing's mind to control Taiwan. So I don't know what we can do to change Beijing's position, but I just know that we should, and all democratic countries in the world should know that only help Taiwan to join international organizations, especially such as the WHA. It is only the way that to make the country, democratic countries consolidation and work together to make better on the health issues.
Reinhard, do you have any comments?
Well, I think we have to acknowledge, first of all, that without moving Beijing, we're not going to succeed. Because Beijing is in a position where they can effectively veto Taiwan's meaningful participation. And this is what is happening at the moment. So, of course, I share the assessment that it is very hard to move them. But I give you an example where it has happened in the international arena. I think back a couple of years at a conference of the parties on climate change, where the G77 and China aligned and took a position that was in confrontation with the position of European countries. Then Europe made proposals that were more advantageous to the G77 members than the position that China had taken. And all of a sudden, there was a certain movement. Because China was afraid of losing its support among the G77, they had to change their position just a little bit. So I think that example can demonstrate that if China would be put in a position where it must be afraid of international isolation, also not just from Europe or the United States or Japan, but also from other countries in Asia and in Africa, for instance, there I think we can successfully have an impact. That means that these civil society efforts are not directed straight forward to Beijing. They're directed towards our national governments to motivate them to take up this issue and to voice their concerns. And even if we do not succeed in the first instance, or maybe even in the second year, I believe the stronger this conversation becomes, the more credibility Taiwan wins, also opening spaces for bilateral and plurilateral cooperation. And that then indirectly can also contribute to strengthening the movement. We cannot imagine that we just snip our fingers and it happens somehow magically. We have to do a lot of work in many countries, not just when the WHA is about to uh, to appear, to happen, but also throughout the years. So I think this has to be a kind of a permanent campaign that gains more steam than it has so far.
We have one of the participants is asking, is there any room for China to be part of Taiwan's meaningful participation in the World Health Assembly? Since they are the main opposer. I mean, I think the question would be, is there any way to make China a part of the solution that you see? I mean, I personally have a difficulty seeing that, but is there any way to twist and turn this, that China would say, this is something we can accept? Who would like to go first? I see Professor Chen is shaking his head, so I think he doesn't say anything. It is really the major obstacles that and I agree with you, Reinhard, it's, we need to engage China somehow. We need to make China part of the solution, but it is difficult.
Well, the present leadership in Beijing is of a totalitarian nature, and the decision-making powers have all been concentrated in the hands of one man or maybe a very, very small number of people. So it's more dictatorial and less free than China has been for a long, long time. That is not a good, that's not a positive condition for making them change their mind, particularly since Xi Jinping seems to believe that it is part of his historical mission to, as he says, reunite Taiwan with the motherland, which is in itself a curious phrase because Taiwan has never been part of the PRC. So reuniting is not an adequate word, I would say. But as I said before, they do not operate in no man's land. They don't operate in a vacuum. China has to pay attention also to the opinion of the international community. And if we present to China an opportunity where they can isolate Taiwan, their efforts to go after their aggressive goals will be enhanced. If, however, there is a broader solidarity with Taiwan, if China has to calculate that so many countries support Taiwan's democratic self-determination, well, that complicates their position, and that gives some support and reassurance to Taiwan. And I think that applies on all fields, and it also applies here. And I believe that the effort must be based on, and I repeat what I said before, on practical reason and practical arguments. I think China is inadequately politicizing this issue. Look at the Palestinians, for instance. The Palestinians are not a recognized state by many, many countries, but still they have a presence in international organizations. It is not, I repeat, it is not a legal issue. And if Taiwan shows how Taiwan can be useful, as it has, and if we enlarge that message, I am sure we can, over time, change the attitude that other countries have. And of course, if a country is dependent on China, if China has made countries dependent, if they are in a debt trap, they will find it very hard to push back against Chinese imposition on so many issues. So it is also an important contribution, possibly, that we offer some of the countries that may not like the kind of dependency in which they have maneuvered themselves to find alternatives to the Chinese collaboration that they have relied on. So I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying this is coming soon, but I'm saying we have to use this trajectory.
Perfect. We have actually quite a lot of questions here. If we have from Lauren Wang here. She says that I grasp the significance of encouraging other nations to voice support for Taiwan. However, it's also apparent that some countries might hesitate due to concerns about potential repercussions on Chinese investments. I think Lithuania, of course, is a case in example here in Europe. Is there a strategy to sway these nations toward advocating for Taiwan? And there was a prior question also about the current administration in Taiwan and the Lai administration. Is there a strategy from Taiwan how to deal with how to increase participation in the World Health Assembly? Is that different from the former administrations? So maybe I'll ask that question to Mr. Shen, and then both could be, looking at. But maybe Professor Shen, if you want to start.
Okay, I think we may not be able to change Beijing, and we just like to make more cooperation chance with other democratic countries or like-minded countries. And what can we do? It is not workable for only one way, and we need other countries' help. And just like Reinhard said, that we can share our experience and we can share our capability to make health issues better in the world. And perhaps through bilateral or multilateral forms without China, Taiwan can participate in other international events or forums or organizations. Just like what I say, that in Asia Pacific, we have the GCTF that is formed with the help from US. And now Japan and Australia is also the member in that forum. We can, just like the GCTF, to make a new one, just like I said, N+1, Nordic +1, Sweden and Iceland, and so on. So we can cooperate on many issues with the same like mind and with the same interest, our nations. So we don't like to change Beijing's mind, and we also know it's very hard and cannot work. But we can do something new without China and without the political effort. So just like try to it. Thank you.
Reinhard,
okay, I follow the same logic that Professor Shen just explained. I indeed also believe that stronger bilateral and plurilateral involvement can be a stepping stone towards Taiwan's full inclusion as a meaningful partner in WHA activities. And I would like to add one more argument against the backdrop of my European experience. 5 years ago, in the European Parliament, Taiwan was not even on the radar screen, or barely on the radar screen. Taiwan had never been the topic of a full debate in the European Parliament. We had mentioned Taiwan now and then in passing, but we never had a focused Taiwan debate. We never had a resolution that focused on EU-Taiwan relations. That began to change after we saw in the European Parliament how much more aggressive the Xi Jinping leadership in Beijing was voicing its Taiwan policy. So we felt we should help pushing back against that. And in the meantime, over the last 5 years, the European Parliament has become a very vocal advocate for more support for Taiwan. And I think we have demonstrated that also through visits, parliamentary visits, not only of individual members, but also official delegations from committees of the European Parliament. 2 vice presidents of the European Parliament have visited Taiwan in the meantime. So I believe that the understanding has been growing that Taiwan is not just a small island pleading for help, but a valuable partner for the international community in so many dimensions. And I mentioned the health contributions that Taiwan made already, but I could also mention the economic contributions that Taiwan makes to the global economy. And I think there's increasingly an understanding also that it is in the interest of global and regional stability and in the interest of solidarity between democracies that we do not leave Taiwan alone. So I would say that has been even bolstered, that recognition has been even bolstered by the experience of the war of aggression that Russia inflicts on Ukraine, where we see that not only the national sovereignty of Ukraine is being attacked, but also the European security architecture is being thrown into turmoil. So there are a lot of people, not just around Europe, but also in Asia, that say, we don't want to see a similar development in Asia as we've seen in Ukraine. And I think against that recognition, there is an additional motivation to make efforts to support stability and to avoid unilateral changes of the status quo in the Taiwan state, in particular, change through force or coercion. And against that backdrop, I think there's new space. There's new space to try to convince partners to come on board with these common efforts. Of course, China has prevailed in its veto position over so many years now, but I do not think that countries are completely agnostic vis-a-vis the aggressive policies that China pursues. And if they can contribute meaningfully to reining that in, I think there's a chance.
I could not agree more, actually. I think the reference also to Ukraine, I think is extremely valid, because the failure of speaking out and actually defending Ukraine in 2014 led to the situation we have today. So I have to echo that argument. Then one of the attendees is asking, actually, which follows a bit on this. Is it worth for Taiwan to further bilateral health cooperation to ultimately move towards integrating Taiwan in the global health system? Perhaps specializing and perfecting in certain health research areas can prompt countries to forego China's political opposition. I mean, immediately I think about microchips, which is, of course, has actually gained somewhat of a security for Taiwan, because they're taking the world lead on microchips. Is there any way that we can imagine, for example, health cooperation with European Union that would propel Taiwan in a situation that this can be used to strengthen their security? Because I do agree with you, Reinhard, that we need to ensure that the status quo is maintained, and that we increase security and a peaceful resolution without doubt. Is there anything we can do to strengthen that move?
Well, I think there are multiple avenues. One avenue would be possibly in realizing how difficult it is becoming for international health industry to invest successfully in China, and how risky it is, on the other hand, to depend on supplies from the PRC in the health sector. During the recent visit of the German Chancellor to Beijing, members of his delegation from the health sector clearly expressed their frustration with increasing difficulties on gaining a foothold or just being treated fairly in the Chinese market. I think the dual circulation strategy that Xi Jinping pursues as an economic guideline, which tries to decouple China from any dependencies on the international community and to make other countries dependent on China, is something that should be realized as an economic risk of great dimensions. And that could induce us to find ways of working more intensely with Taiwan. There is a lot of FDI from Europe going into Taiwan already. 25% of all Taiwanese FDI is from Europe. That's the largest contribution from any region, more than US and Japan combined. But I'm not sure a lot of that goes to the health sector or to the health industry. So maybe there could be an opportunity for a resilient supply chain agreement between Taiwan and the EU with regard to the health sector. Maybe that could be an effort to strengthen Taiwan's role.
Professor Shen, do you have a comment there?
Yes, I totally agree, Reinhardt's issue. And I think the more exchanges within Taiwan and other countries, and the current situation will be more safe. And we also should let Beijing know that the cost of changing the status quo is very high. That we need all democratic countries to send the clear message to Beijing. And we also encourage Beijing to accept Taiwan is about maintaining the status quo rather than change it.
Yeah. Maybe I would like to share one point is that, like Reinhardt mentioned, such a resolution on February 28 this year, the European Parliament passed a resolution call on Commission and whole EU member state. Number one, neither Taiwan nor China is supporting two others. And number two, support Taiwan's meaningful participation in the whole so-called international organization, including WHA and WHO and so on. So, however, member of EU, some of them, I would like to say that they have always such kind of political shadow from Beijing side. The point is that how could we solidarity just only EU 27 member state? That is the first one step. And normally we emphasize Taiwan with EU country, we have common value. However, since 5 years, like Reinhardt mentioned, actually we have not just only common value, freedom, democracy, human rights, but also we have common interest in. And common interest in, like Nicholas mentioned, semiconductor and so-called Taiwan street security, but one thing nowadays, today we talk about such we call global health issue. And global health actually is also belong to one of we called common interest. So if we can, number one, solidarity, the whole member state in the EU Parliament in the EU member state, according to EU Parliament resolution, and such 27 member states can stand on the same page, on Beijing side, I think maybe we can do some small step for this, we mentioned common interest.
But then, as a European and a very sort of pro-integration European, I still have to question the European solidarity and European cohesion. I mean, we have many different Europes. And when we're looking now, Xi Jinping's visit to Europe, France, Hungary, Serbia, I think represents a bit of the more, represent maybe some of the state that has a shadow, not least Hungary. So, I mean, there's going to be difficulties in maintaining. That's, of course, why we need people like Reinhard Bütikofer in the European Parliament who can actually push those issues forward, because I think Europe is very divided. I don't know, Reinhard, if you agree on me on this one.
No, I do not.
Oh, thank you.
Europe is more united on China and Taiwan and all other issues in this context than it has been in a long time. If you look just at the economic dimension, we started to create new trade defense instruments in order to push back against unfair Chinese investment and trading practices only in 2016. In the meantime, we have come up with a good list of instruments: the anti-dumping instrument, the investment screening, the foreign subsidies instrument, the anti-coercion instrument, the international procurement instrument, the human rights due diligence regulation, the forced labor regulation. All that has happened in the course of the last 7 years. I think that shows that Europe is indeed capable of finding common cause and pushing back against unfair PRC practices. And when you look at Xi Jinping's present visit, I think there are two sides to that visit. In Paris, he met with President Macron and President von der Leyen, and President von der Leyen was as explicit as she could have been in the remarks that she made after that meeting to the media about the European attitude vis-à-vis China's economic strategy. She said China is trying to flood our market with highly subsidized products over capacity, and the world cannot assume the responsibility to absorb Chinese overcapacities as Beijing pleases. And we will take hard decisions to push back. She talked about the risk of deindustrialization of Europe made in China. So I think you cannot but recognize that there is a strong stance on some of these issues. And I expect the next European Parliament and the next Commission to be just as tough as she is now talking. And I'm pretty optimistic as regards to Parliament, because over the last 5 years, we have had a lot of harmony between the major democratic groups, ranging from the Greens on one side to the Conservatives on the other, including the 5 major democratic groups. So on all these issues, we've had majorities of more than 80% in the European Parliament. That's rock solid. I also believe that Europe is paying more attention to other dimensions of China's policy, in particular the role that China is playing as the main facilitator of Putin's war of aggression in Ukraine. China pretends to be neutral, but it is anything but. China is facilitating this war. Every day, Ukrainians die because of China's support for Putin's war. And they don't sell cannons, they don't sell shells, they leave that to North Korea. But they sell the technology that Russia needs to conduct this war. This is also seen very clearly, increasingly around Europe. The other half of Xi Jinping's visit is indeed his visit to Hungary and Serbia. I would say he visits two of his vassals in Europe, and this is a confrontational visit from a European. He signals to Europe, I have geopolitical ambitions that are not just confined to my region. I have geopolitical ambitions that reach all the way to Europe. And we take that seriously, but I think we can overcome that. And Europe has shown in recent conflicts that we can overcome Hungarian blockades.
I think that was a very good European perspective. And those are the things, as a European, I would like to hear much more. Professor Chen, do you have any final words before we close this?
Yes, thank you. I just want to emphasize one thing, that so-called one China principle cannot reduce public health risk and anything in the world. And it's only through Taiwan's participation in the organizations and work together to address them. And I would like to thank you again, once again, and welcome everyone when you have time and if you will to visit Taiwan. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I thought it was very good, and I'll turn to them, but Ambassador Gu later here. But for me, it is still important to hear these quite optimistic voices, and I think that this was very useful. There are challenges we need to face, obviously, but I think there also are a lot of positive signs you can see, and I would personally like to thank Mr. Butekoffer and Professor Chen for taking the time. Very enlightening and very useful comments.
Yes, yes. The same my opinion. Thanks ISDP, Nicholas, Reinhard, and Yongzhong, Professor. Thank you all of your participation today's event. It is very, very important issues, not just only for us, but also for the global village. And we do hope, I have just a wish, we do hope this year we can count as much as possible, as many as possible, EU member state can take opportunity by means of WHA, speak out. We call this general discussion session. In this general discussion session, speak out, support Taiwan's meaningful participation, and as an observer in the WHA. Thank you.
So thank you, and again, thank you to Representative Gu and the Taipei mission here in Stockholm for supporting this as well. So have a fantastic day, and look forward to seeing you all again.
Yeah, see you in Taiwan or in Sweden.
See you in Taiwan or in Sweden or in Brussels or Berlin.
See you.
Great.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.